This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 34, brought to you by FABDB.net, your premier source for deck building tools, collection management, and simulated booster drafting. Yeah, and also other stuff. Check out Techlo Labs and check out Wraith Times. Yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff out there in card tech land. Upgrade your account at FABDB.net. Get access to all the greatest features. Bring your game to the next level. FABDB.net. Our guest today is Logan Petersen of the Flesh and Pod podcast, a wonderful human being. But before we get to Logan, let's get to the facts. ProQuest Season 2 is still well underway. We've got one more weekend of naughtiness before maybe Chain gets pushed past the Living Legend mark. So you have one more weekend to punch your ticket to Lille, France for the second Pro Tour happening in August. But we've got the Uprising world premiere just a week and a half away, ladies and gentlemen. June 10th to 12th in Madrid, Sydney, and Las Vegas. There will be the world premiere event of Uprising. Lots of drafting going on. It is a calling. There's going to be some great stuff to happen there at the World Uprising premiere. We're so excited for that to occur. And hey, spoiler season for the cards is right around the corner as well. We're recording this on June 1st / May 31st, etc., yada, yada, yada. Long story short, ladies and gentlemen, is that on June 4th through to the 8th, you are going to start seeing card leaks of what there is coming down the pipe for Uprising. I've got my card leak here, still sealed. I know what it is, but I ain't going to tell you, because you're going to have to tune in on June 7th for my card reveal. But between June 4th and June 8th, lots of cards are going to be revealed across various different platforms and wonderful human beings. So make sure that you're locked and loaded for that. Hey, do you want to have your match casted by myself, by another professional caster, someone like Rick from BCW, maybe Tan and Grace as well? You can go ahead and talk to me. Send me a DM, and we can get your match casted professionally for a small cost. Again, we've done it before. I've done it for some wonderful people out there, and the reviews have been up there, so I will bring my passion, my love to your kitchen table game. Maybe it's even more than that. Maybe it's a ProQuest. Maybe it's something along those lines. Either way, record your game, reach out to me, and we could talk. I also want to give a big ups to my wonderful Patreon followers. You guys are wicked cool. Thank you for supporting the show. All of you from Tier 1 to Tier 3, you guys are wonderful. There are 3 different ways that you can support the Instant Speed Podcast. Again, we don't hide any content behind paywalls. But if you want to support the show for as little as $1 a month, you can get some wicked perks and just give me a high five or a pat on the back and say, Flake, we like what you do. Go to patreon.com/instantspeedpod. And that is a wonderful way that you can go ahead and share your support with us here. Thank you so, so much. All right, our guest this week on episode number 34 of the Instant Speed Podcast is the host of the Flesh and Pod podcast. That would be one Logan Petersen. Let's get to Mr. Logan Petersen. One more weekend. Are you looking to push Chain over Living Legend? Are you saying, you know what, we got Bravo there, Viscerize there, how about we push that other emo-faced, brooding dude with his long hair and his look of like, oh, Jared Leto is my favorite Joker. No, Chain to Living Legend is something that you gotta be pushing for, ladies and gentlemen. So go get a chain list. Go to the last ProQuest of the season with a chain list. Where do you get that chain list? FABDB.net has everything you need. Not just the deck, but maybe you take that deck and you fiddle around with it. You change a few cards, you want statistics, you want to print it out, and your chicken scratch is not going to be squinted at when the TO is like, what the hell is this card? Anyways, FABDB.net. Ladies and gentlemen, upgrade your account. You won't regret it. The Instant Speed Podcast is thrilled to welcome one of the most candid voices in Flesh and Blood. He is one of the hosts, of the Fresh and Pod podcast, and has a history in many CCG titles over many years. Welcome to ISP, Logan Petersen. How are you, my friend?
Thank you, Matt. It's Flesh and Pod. The fresh people are a little bit different.
Did I say Fresh and Pod?
You did, but that's okay.
We're one big happy family. Man. He is a good man.
He is a fun time if there ever was one. I'm doing great. How are you, buddy?
I'm well. Yeah. In the blooper reel of this episode, you'll see me right before we start spill my coffee on my phone, my international adapter for plugs, my preview card, my keyboard, and all of the stuff, and my calendar. So basically,
the preview card was safely sealed. That is important.
It was safely sealed. Yeah, it's still here. So
Perfect.
we have not. Yeah, that's going to be busted open on the 7th. So it's here. I know
soon.
what it is, but I haven't opened it out of the envelope, and I don't intend to. It's going to live there forever and always. But
probably a good idea.
That's where we're at for the episode. And if it was going to be one of those, I might as well just completely go full fakakta on the name of your podcast. So that's just
I mean, that's totally okay.
It's on brand for today, Logan.
I mean, it is what it is.
I'm just glad it's you here, because if it was if this was a James White episode, if this was like a Josh Scott episode, if this was any LSS episode, I'd be so embarrassed.
It sure isn't, and I make enough mistakes for the two of us, so you're more than okay at this point in time.
You know who I feel like? It's so perfectly set up here, because the one thing that legitimately dodged the gigantic coffee tsunami that occurred is my Kirk Van Houten pin.
Perfect.
Yeah. Which it's his demo tape, and if you open the demo tape, you've got there.
Can I borrow a feeling? Yep.
Yeah. Can I borrow a feeling?
Yeah, you had it upside down so the viewers couldn't read it.
I
know what it is.
Yeah, you know what it is. There you go. Can I borrow a feeling?
I have watched every episode of The Simpsons. So
at least 5 times. That's
there are episodes I've gone 20 on.
Easy.
I remember a high school quiz bowl competition where at the end of it, one of the categories we could select was in the small town of Springfield, and I'm like, that's a Simpsons category. Take that, I'll run it. And it was, we are going to give you the character's first name, and you give us the character's last name.
Oh,
8 seconds later, I ran the category. We won.
Oh my god,
it was nothing.
What was the hardest one that they gave you?
I mean, it was probably getting Apu's last name right, but Nahasmi Petalon's not that hard.
It's not that hard unless they ask you to spell it. Like there's
right, and it was like Clancy, Wiggum, Barney, Gumble. Come on, let's go.
Wayland, Smithers, let's go. All of them, yeah.
Sislak, whatever. Come on.
Yeah, no, these are better. These are kind of easy. There was Terwilliger. Yeah.
Come on now.
Now, can you get all of Selma's last names based on all of her marriages?
Bouvier, Terwilliger, McClure. Did she marry Barney at one point?
No, she almost was. Almost. She almost married Barney. Sorry, she almost married Apu though.
I can't remember who the golfer was. That's the one I'm missing.
Well, like you're talking about Lee Carvalho's putting challenge.
Yeah,
I don't think she married Lee Carvalho.
I don't think she did, but I think that might be all of them, right? Or does she have one more in there that I'm missing?
I think it's the episode with Proposition 24 or something like that, where they want to deport Apu. So Homer
almost married. Yeah.
Homer suggests that she marries him, and then that's where she said, "I'm already Selma Bouvier Terwilliger McClure, and I don't need to be Nahasapima Pedal, whatever," is what she says.
Nahasapima Pedal, whatever.
Yeah. So funny that you should mention that it's Simpsons pub trivia, because when I first moved to Toronto, one of the first things I did with one of my best friends and her boyfriend at the time, and some of the just getting acclimated to
people,
right, was they invited me out for Simpsons trivia. Now they're like, listen, it's gonna be hard. I said, okay. I'm like, I've no problem. And it's funny because they named there was different teams there, and all the teams had different names. And the winning team, the team that went every week and always won, was the team name was Sex Cauldron, which I thought was hilarious from the Maison Derrière episode.
Yep.
And so they're like, okay, well, we need a name for a team. So I suggested Stupid Lisa Garbage Face, which I thought was pretty good. Instead of Lisa Lionheart, it was Stupid Lisa Garbage Face. Anyway, long story short, I answered probably 98% of the questions for our team, and we finished I think we finished second. And it was I was like the ringer in there, and poor Sex Cauldron, which with literally 6 quote unquote Simpsons experts, were sweating it because I was just crushing
up on
them
hard.
Yeah, basically. And they're like, okay, one of the questions was something along the lines of what brand of what style of cigarettes does Selma smoke? And I was like, do you know this one?
Laramie's?
Oh, no, you need the specific. They said, we know it's they said,
okay,
you need to know the exact type.
Now you're going to have to give me a second. I think it's Laramie 100s, but I don't remember for sure.
It's Laramie Extra Tar. It's the extra tars.
Okay.
Those were
I
like
would not have got that one.
but like I was like, I'm like, these are the small little subtle jokes which are hilarious. Right? And I was like, yeah,
there's
I'm
so
like,
many.
that's the one. So,
I always name my Simpsons trivia team names are always named after a Phil Hartman character because Phil Hartman was my favorite part of The Simpsons ever. And that's just
agreed.
to honor the greatness that was Phil Hartman.
Between Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz, like those are two tremendous characters. And what's funny,
Sneak in Lyle Landley.
Lyle Landley, of course, but he was a one-off for the monorail episode.
It was so good.
It was so good. I mean, he brought monorails to
Ogdenville
and North Haverbrook, and by golly, it put them on the map, right? So
sure did.
Yeah, that's oh man, we were like way off the rails, but it's okay.
Yeah, this is what it's like on my podcast, where we just end up doing this. So
there's a group of people like what I've noticed is that the demographic for my podcast and many Flesh and Blood podcasts, frankly, are people I think within our age bracket of like between like 25 and 40 or like around that sort of area where, I'm 36. I don't know. How old are you, if you may, if
I'm 41.
Okay. So we're all kind of within that wheelhouse where we grew up on the golden age of The Simpsons, like the seasons
absolutely
2 through 9 or whatever, where the great ones were. So those are, etched into our mind. But the demographic of the people who consume Flesh and Blood content typically is it's not like sub 20 or 25 and younger. No, it's way pushed towards like the 25 to 45 demographic, and that's like kind of the wheelhouse of Seinfeld references.
Yeah, they'll give my references. It's great.
Yeah,
it feels good.
Definitely. Like, trust me, when I'm casting matches and I just you slide out a Seinfeld reference. I did one for Isaac Crute where somebody who is classically known to be very stoic and non-responsive to any game state. At one point, there was like a moment where I think he had figured out that Kano wasn't going to beat him and he was going to win the game, and you could see that he was like, there's a little bit of like emotion in him, and I think it was Brian Gottlieb and said, "It's like I think this is the first time that Isaac Crute is finally showing a little bit of emotion," and I'm like, I think it moved. Like just like the George Costanza when he gets the when he's he gets the massage from the man.
Yeah. I think it moved.
Anyway, well, listen. Welcome to the show is what I meant to say.
Thank you.
That is what I meant to say. Let's hit you with the origin story. Again, this is the first time for you here, so let's talk a little bit about your origin story of how you got into card games in general, but ultimately where you ended up, which is having your own podcast for Flesh and Blood, as well as playing and just being part of that, thriving community.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and we didn't have a game shop at all. I was an athlete when I was younger. I wouldn't consider myself a good one, but good enough. I mean, I played, but I'm basically a very horrific knee injury that carried through. My left knee was dislocated 12 times between the ages of 11 and 20. Made it so that just playing wasn't possible anymore. So I needed something to do. And my friend base also contained a lot of people who were into stuff that were, your sci-fi people, your fantasy people. And I played D&D, and the Star Wars CCG is where it all began for me. I know, right? Yeah, you're in. And a lot of that was just my love of Star Wars, honestly, was the gateway drug, was the fact that I already love Star Wars. This is right around the same time the special edition was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It was in theaters, and the card shop that we went to frequented in Mason City, Iowa, which is still there, had carried Star Wars CCG and Magic and Spellfire and X-Files. I also played X-Files at one point, but not great. And I carried all these games. And so I remember going to see episode 4 in the theater for the first time in my life. And also I think it was, I don't think it was the same day. But it wasn't the same day that I learned to play, but that was the same day that I bought my first packs of Star Wars CCG. And I bought Black Border Premiere, so limited premiere. Bought 6 packs, opened Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in those 6 packs. And
huge.
The car threatened to leave me in Mason City, Iowa, 53 miles from home, because no one had pulled either yet. And at that point in time, I'm like, maybe I'm just lucky. But that was enough to hook me. And then turns out the game engine's just incredible. It's a very fun game engine. I kept playing that until basically you couldn't. My entire play group, again, small town, left, but there was plenty of Magic players left. And so kind of transitioned to Magic. I started playing Magic in 96 as well. And so I played Magic off and on from like 96 until 2003, 2004, had a little bit of a hiatus. And then about 2006-ish, 5 or 6, I really started playing that competitively and seriously. And cash some Grand Prix, top 4 in SCG, things like that. Was the PTQN boss or one of them in Iowa. So I was decent, but was never broke through really. But enjoyed the game, even though the community was not. The Iowa community was great. The community outside of Iowa, not so much. But as one of my Magic friends that said, "Hey, because we both work at the same place." And over work, He's like, "Have you heard of Flesh and Blood?" No, barely. I mean, I think I've seen something posted about it somewhere on like a poster. And he's just like, "I wonder if it's any good." I'm like, "Okay, Facebook group. Is there one?" "Hey, there is one." "Okay. Oh, wait, there's a learn to play tonight and then a draft. Let's just do it." "Okay, cool." We go, we learn to play, we draft. I go 2-1, and I'm like, okay, this game engine's actually quite good. And these people are a blast. So I'm just going to come back. And that was a little under a year ago, about 10 months ago. And yeah, that's where that's kind of how it all went. And
here you are.
Here I am. I will fully say that for me, Flesh and Blood has been every bit as enjoyable so far as my peak times, my happiest times playing any other game.
That's a good thing to hear, because I mean, like, listen, you went from one end of the spectrum where you're like, okay, like the community in where you're from in Iowa or whatever was great, and then the community afterwards wasn't so great, right? Is kind of
right.
What you're, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then here you are, and you just sort of dip your toe into Flesh and Blood. And honestly, besides the game engine, let me ask you this: if the game engine, I mean, obviously is what it is, which appealed to you and you enjoyed, but what if the community wasn't so receptive to you? What if the community, not necessarily to you, but like, let's say you went there and you went 2-1, but you had a poor experience with the people there? Because you mentioned that everyone there was a blast, but what if it was the opposite? Would you stick with Flesh and Blood in that regard? I mean, it's a tough question to think about, because let's be real, if you're going to enjoy something like Flesh and Blood, but every other element of it, like your only outlet to play it and enjoy it is with people that kind of make it kind of bad, then, at a certain point, there's got to be a situation where you just pull the plug on it and walk away.
So that's an extremely interesting question. And I would say yes and no. The yes is because of the game engine, I would have invested in the game. I'm already pretty well invested in the game. I do own play sets of every card that's ever been printed to make sure I can build any deck I want to whenever I want to. And a lot of that is that I love the game, but it's also, it is an investment. We're close to the ground floor of this game. So my belief in the game is that over time, when I'm finally, the mental faculties are so far gone that I can never, put 4 cards together to do a thing ever again, I can recoup some of my investment, right? I think that the engine had me believing and investing in the game from a monetary standpoint, and I would have done that regardless. But I wouldn't have gone back and played.
Okay, yeah,
I just wouldn't have.
No, well, that's like that. Like, part of that question that I asked was also just to emphasize the importance of the community and the appeal,
absolutely.
Right? Because I mean, the draw to the game is one thing, but what hooks people and what kind of leads me to invest more than I typically would, not just saying financially, but time, effort. I wouldn't have this podcast. I wouldn't have a career in the game if the first time I went out to the game, I had a terrible time and it was just, a crappy experience. So
I played Magic off and on for 25 years and never did anything or wanted to engage with the larger community on any level like this. And within 3 months of playing Flesh and Blood, I had a podcast.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it went. Like, this game was sort of introduced to me haphazardly by a friend of mine named Lewis Woodhouse, and he explained me the rules, and then I went to go try it out. I said, "Damn!" I'm like, and there is an appeal, obviously, to getting in at the ground floor. When you're looking at stuff like when I started this podcast, the only podcast that I even knew about was I heard of Arsenal Pass, and that was it. And I didn't jump in because I was like, oh, this is an exploitable space. There's not a lot of stuff out there. I can easily, stake my claim, drop, plant my flag and sort of have a thing. That wasn't it, because there's a lot of games where you can do that. This was one that actually spoke to me, and I said, I want to invest my time and my effort, and I want to have a good time doing this. And that's exactly also what you did too. And finding your voice and podcasting and such. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the fact that, like you mentioned, you spent so many years in other card games, and also just tangentially here, you're right. The Star Wars CCG, Decipher made the best rules for games I've ever seen in my life. No offense to, Magic, Flesh and Blood, all the other card games.
Little offense to Magic. Just a little.
Little bit. Star Wars CCG and Lord of the Rings TCG are the most beautifully designed games that create scenarios that actually make you feel like you're in a movie scenario. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, like, okay, there's Obi-Wan and Han Solo at the cantina. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Vader and Boba Fett walk in. Sparks are going to fly. It's going to be fireworks. Yeah. Chaos is going to ensue. There's going to be bodies on the ground. Things are going to go down. And then there's Lord of the Rings, where it's okay. You got to start at the Shire and get to Mordor. And as you're going, it gets progressively more difficult, but you're recruiting more help as you're going. But you're also, like, it felt desperate. It felt tough.
Like you're being choked. Like the world is closing in on you. It does feel like that.
And
I did play that game too.
And at the end of it, all you need to do is you need to survive the last sight with just Frodo. You can kill off everyone else.
Everybody else can die.
But if Frodo lives at the end of the last sort of sight, you're dropping the ring in the in Mount Doom.
And you win. Yep.
And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful game. Anyway, but none of these games prior to this, and inspired you to create content for it, and so talk to us a little bit about the development of your podcast, of the Flesh and Pod podcast, and what led you to sort of decide that I have the passion and I have the drive to make this work, because it's not easy, and I know it, but a lot of other people out there might not know it. And I wrote an article about the pitfalls and the realities about getting into content creation, but there's a lot of people who are unaware of it. So talk to us a little bit about the process, the mindset, and what led you to actually, pushing off and setting out on this voyage.
Yeah. So I host a show with two other people, Abby and Jordan Kennedy, and Jordan's been a friend of mine for about 10 years. We met playing Magic in Columbus, Ohio, and I think 2012. And when Jordan and I have very similar personalities, we are both off the rails storytellers that love to build narratives through language and have the kind of fun off the rails conversations that get vulgar sometimes. I mean, if you listen to our podcast, it's not family friendly. And we also like to, sip a beverage or six. But when we talked about it, the conversation, it happened in the Calling Cincinnati. Was the genesis, where we were both there. We're all three there, actually. And I sat down with them and I said, hey, because Jordan had done Magic podcasts and a baseball podcast. And I said, why don't we do a podcast? He's like, I was going to ask you the same thing. I'm like, okay, well, here's my one requirement. Abby has to be on it. And he said, done. And Abby's like, wait, what? I don't get a say? It's like, no, we need a mediator. That's you. Sorry. And she's like, it's fine. I was going to say yes anyway. So we built this podcast. We built this core around what we wanted, which was neither of us want to dig down and talk strategy. We want to dig into the community and the news and our opinions on what it is and call each other out if we think we're wrong, or just riff off each other when we think we're right and fly off the rails and talk about whatever just comes to mind. And there are definitely episodes where we've gotten together and gone, hey, there's no news this week. We don't think that's going to be probably 40 minutes. And then an hour and a half later, like, well, oops. So I think that happens. And our voice is in community. And so when we first started this, we didn't think we'd have any listeners. We thought we'd do like 10 episodes, maybe if we were lucky. And we'd have like a few listeners, the people in our towns, the Des Moines community would listen and the Columbus community would listen. That'd be about it. And that is just not the case at all. And we have a vibrant Discord with people everywhere, New Zealand, Australia, Poland, just kind of everywhere. And then all across the United States, interacting with each other. And we're like, okay, well, what did we do? How did that happen? And it just turns out that they want to listen to people that they feel are like them. And we are like them. We are not the upper echelon of this game by any stretch of the imagination, but we're people that will interact with you and talk about the same things that you are passionate about and you are interested in ways that relate to you. We base a lot of our content around listener questions because a lot of them are fun, like super fun. Like one of them in our latest episode was, what is the best piece of bad advice you could give a new player starting out? And I said, you should try Azalea. And it's stuff like that, right? Like you laughed. And that's what we're gunning for. We want people to be entertained, not necessarily learn how to play the game. We're not doing learn to play. We're not doing any of that. What we're doing is we're creating and trying to foster an environment where everybody's welcome. Everybody can have their say at some point in time. Everybody's opinion is valid, and provide the platform to everybody to say, look at us. We're the same as you. Come hang out. That's all we want.
Yeah, being relatable is always an appealing element to any kind of show, and that's why I gravitate towards you just as a friend. At the same time, because we have good discourse. Oh, yeah. We have good like we just fired off this whole segment with a 10-minute tangential nonsense about monorails and garbage. But
I'd also like to inform people that there was a card in Star Wars CCG called Commence Primary Ignition, and its job was to blow up planets.
Yes,
it felt great.
It was an epic event. It was amazing. But you had to build your whole deck around it, and it was one hell of... for those who want to know, I actually put on a show match with a buddy of mine, Christo, and I played Massassi base operations in order to blow up the Death Star, and he played set your course for Alderaan in order to blow up Alderaan. So we had this race where I had to blow up the Death Star before he blew up Alderaan.
Ventron versus CPI, let's go.
It was amazing. That video is on my YouTube, which I don't put anything on anymore, but if you want to check it out, that video is lurking around somewhere. It's great. But like the developing of the podcast is and the culture that you are sort of cultivating amidst your Flesh and Pod sort of community is one that is of inclusivity. It's of it's not, and this is where the space becomes important to know what's out there and where you're kind of marking your territory, as it were. And it's hard to explain to people because a lot of people might get intimidated if they want to enter the space of podcasting, because let's get real, there's so many. It seems like every week there's another one or two Flesh and Blood podcasts specifically that come out, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. That's just, if you want to do it. I always tell people, and like that, the last piece of advice, and partially some of the most important piece of advice I gave to people when it comes to actually getting started with this stuff, is to start. It's to actually start it off. It's, it has nothing to do with how good your microphone is, or if your lighting is perfect, or if you have the a 3090 GPU on your computer to process your while
audio.
You're
mining Bitcoin. Yeah,
exactly. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the passion and the willingness to actually get dirty and learn from the whole process, and of which I love to see new podcasts. And whether they succeed or fail, it's the fact that people want to add to the conversation. And if you feel like you have a place to add, I mean, like, everyone has their space, and like you mentioned, you're a very more casual space, and Arsenal Pass is a more strategic, strategy, high-end level play base. And we all find our little areas to kind of have our quote-unquote expertise in. Yeah. But do you feel like there's kind of the space is getting crowded, maybe? Do you feel like content, at least from a podcasting format, is sort of beaten into the ground by now? There's so many options out there, and to a degree, sometimes too much choice can be problematic. But I mean, I'll add on to this after you give your piece. But I think that there can not never be enough. But I think that more the merrier, especially in the this growth spurt that Flesh and Blood's having.
So I'm on your show right now, right? And
yes.
I have my own podcast too.
Yes.
And in a lot of other spaces, true crime or even magic or whatever, those communities see themselves as competition, right? They're fighting each other for these listens. That doesn't exist in this community. And it really feels like a rising tide situation where, lifting all ships, or how did Tommy put it? Takes a tree to build a village?
No, Tommy said that a rising tide takes a village to build a tree.
That's the one. Okay.
Now, I may have bastardized that and put it through the ringer, but it is certainly a Purple Monkey dishwasher scenario. But
it's a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, has a subject and a predicate. It just doesn't necessarily make sense. So I think that right now I agree with your statement of there can never be enough. That's inaccurate. There's obviously a saturation point. I don't think that we're close to it. Because from all the podcasts I've seen, including ours, there's usually growth. There's usually more listeners, and then the more listeners that find one find another. And we don't really lose listens, even when we're farming. We're saying go listen to, in our Discord or whatever, go listen to Fresh and Buds, go listen to Living Legends when it comes out, go join Melody and Elaine's spaces, go listen to Pitch Perfect, go listen to Arsenal Pass. If you want that gameplay content, go there. It's very good. Go watch Fabrica videos. They are incredible. Those guys in Ukraine are just perfect at what they do. It is the best gameplay videos I've seen. We direct people there all the time. But I don't know. We're not crowded right now. And I don't feel crowded right now. I feel whole. I feel a community. I feel people that I want to share the space with on a continual basis and want to help promote their content and see them succeed as well. And I don't know what the point is that will feel crowded, but I don't feel like we're there yet.
No, I agree with you there. It's hard to sort of go down that route and say, okay, it's going to eventually be crowded, because I don't want to ever discourage anybody from,
No. But there is, just like anything else, there's a saturation point.
Yeah.
What is it? I don't think we're near there yet. I think that you could probably keep starting a podcast for another 3 years and still not hit it.
Yeah,
so
you're not wrong there. I think a part of it might just be the fact that it depends what you want to do. Because it's hard to do this and not come off as being gatekeeping on this. I would say this is more so as a situation of not warning, but it's advice to be heeded, in the sense that if you do want to partake in this, that it's not all glamorous and such, and you do need, you do definitely need to find yourself a little corner or a cubby of where you specialize, because I don't touch strategy. I don't produce deck techs and stuff like that, because it's not something I'm good at, and I know that there's way better options out there. But in the same regard, one thing I feel I do well is putting spotlight on community members and asking the right questions. And much like you have a very a very lighthearted, great discussion, great conversation. I was on Flesh and Pod recently. I got to meet and speak with a lot of these people. We had, it was like the round table that we did, right?
Yep.
And that was a phenomenal discussion, and I felt that I felt that once, just being part of there, I knew exactly what the vibe was, and I knew what to expect to a degree and such. And yeah, I mean, crowded spaces in terms of podcasting, I think that the problem is that there's such a thirst for content out there that people are just gobbling this stuff up. Just some of the tweets that I get, or I'm included on, and such, of people saying, all right, well, I've listened to about 3 or 4 podcasts already this week. I've got to go to the gym tomorrow. I've got nothing to listen to. When's the next episode's coming out? There's people who are constantly trying to fill, and I feel this too, because I just jammed through. I'm on my second complete Sopranos
a rewatch.
Well, I've done the rewatch for Sopranos twice already. I've already watched the series multiple times, but I just listened to the entirety of a show called Pod Yourself a Gun, which was a more comedic take on a Sopranos rewatch. And now I'm doing Talking Sopranos with Michael Imperioli and Steve Sherpa, aka
Oh, okay.
Chris Moltisanti and Bobby Bacala. And now they're going through it all. And it's like, damn, like when you love something, you can never get enough of it, right? And it's
Agreed.
Just, yeah, and it's just on all the time. Like, it's on when I'm taking a shower. It's on while I'm brushing my teeth. It's on while I'm making lunch, dinner, whatever. When I go on my walks, as long as I'm not in discussion with somebody, I have something on. And yeah, you run out. And like I'm kind of starting to feel, Logan, that like you're spot on when it says like 2-3 years down the road, we might have like 100 podcasts, but it might feel like only 5 because you're blowing through them so fast.
Yeah, there's Jordan calls it his content consumption loop, where he listens to very specific shows on a daily basis and still has room to add more.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, well, one, that level of organization is something I would aspire to in my life and fail at completely. I just kind of plug in and go. I don't really pay attention to the thing that my phone is playing while there's headphones on. I rarely listen to my show because I was there when I recorded it. Why the hell do I have to listen to it?
I'm the same way.
It's bad. I understand it.
I already have my voice in my head when I'm thinking, do I really want to listen to my stupid nonsense voice? Like,
yeah, I hate the sound of my voice. I really do. It's odd as much as I talk, but sometimes it grates on me.
These are the hidden little pitfalls of content creation when you have to come to terms with certain things like the sound of your own voice. I hated my own voice for a long time, and now it's only recently that I've been like, yeah, I'm all right with it. It is who I am, and what can I say?
Honestly, in college, I was a rhetoric major.
A what? Sorry,
rhetoric.
Oh, okay.
My degree is in rhetoric. My minors are philosophy, religion, and English.
Perfect.
So yeah, I am well qualified to drive a cab, tend a bar. I've got all those things nailed down, but it helps in a lot of ways to craft language, right? Because you're looking for the available means of persuasion, and I can be fairly persuasive. I mean, you were dumb enough to come on my show, but that was obviously in jest. It was so great to do that roundtable from my perspective because I had a list of people that I wanted on the show, and I had my backups in case somebody said no, and then nobody said no.
Of course not. Why would we say no?
What? Okay, I guess everybody's in. Cool. This sounds great. And Jordan's like, I don't know how you did that. I'm like, I asked. Honestly, I did nothing else.
Dude, all the time. You know how this happens to me? People come to me sometimes and ask me, and they're like, they'll either ask me about being on something, and I can honestly count on one hand over 4 or 5 years of my life that I've ever said no to appearing on a show. And most of that on one hand, probably half of that is because of scheduling issues and such. But I've never, I think maybe once or twice in my life have I just declined and said, I'm not interested. Thank you so much for asking.
Right.
But I mean, like it's people ask me and they say like, hey, what are the chances that, I could get somebody like Tariq Patel on the show? I'm like, dude, just shoot him a DM and ask him, man.
Right?
Like they're like, how do you do it? I'm like, very simple. I send a DM and then I wait for a response. That's basically it. And it's amazing how many people, like for instance, James White. The first time I had James White on in January, like somebody mentioned to me, they're like, oh, did you know that your podcast, like we listened to it in the offices in New Zealand. I forgot who mentioned it to me. They're like, yeah, the people from LSS listen to it. I said, that's amazing. That's awesome. So I just haphazardly shot a message to James and said, hey, would you be interested in answering a few questions and whatever? I'll give them to you all in advance and like anything you don't want to talk about. And he's like, F yeah, let's get on this. Let's do this. And I'm like, all right, there you go. I mean, if I can get him, I can get anybody in that case, right? So
yeah, he literally signed a hockey jersey with our logo on it that is blatant copyright infringement and signed it, thank you for infringing on my copyright, James White.
He's a legend.
So he is a legend. The guy is, I really am waiting for the James White heel turn at some point. I think it'll be great if it happens and he's going to play it perfectly.
Oh.
And then he'll have the face turn behind it and we'll all just be celebrating him even more so.
I think, what? There's definitely some basis there. I mean, him and I have had many conversations that had wrestling overtones to it. And I will say this. It is my mission as long as I am involved in Flesh and Blood, which for me, I hope that I'm 20 years down the line, still calling matches, and you guys are gonna be like that. The old guy is still here. But as long as I'm around, I will be pressuring James. Yes, you, James, if you're listening. I will be pressuring you to create some sort of invitational wrestling style event where it's like 8 people. It's just a bracket, but it comes with,
entrance music, pyro,
the whole 9 yards, a crowd of people, signs up. They would go into like a soundproof booth, but myself, that hack Tan and Grace, that professional Brian Gottlieb and Steven Cookus, aka Armada, Red Zone will all be there, and we will be on the desk yelling and screaming, and we want the whole audience to hear it because we want to go over the top, but they would be in a soundproof booth not being able to kind of hear what's going on outside, and I think that would be amazing. And James, if you're listening, please grant me this wish.
It'd be my pleasure to do the backstage promos if that ever happens.
Oh my God.
To do the backstage interviews and let them cut promos, because I can imagine the promo that like Hayden would cut, or let Tarek go, just let him get full guard and let him just start roasting, encourage it, stoke the flames, find your heels. Let's go.
Dude, there are some actual legends out there who would be just killer on the microphone cutting promos. I think first of all, Tarek is, when people are just too freaking good at everything, like Tarek's like, yeah, I just came back. Yeah. I'm a doctor, national champion, and I just shot like a 78 on the golf course. And
I've only shot 78 once in my life.
Yeah. It's like, okay, like we get it.
Okay.
But
that's nice.
Like he is, I don't know how many of you out there are kind of wrestling fans or know anything, but he's kind of like an MJF, in terms of heel status. I
think he's Kurt Hennig. I think he's Mr. Perfect.
He is kind of Mr. Perfect. Yeah.
I think Brendan Patrick is a little bit more MJF-ish.
Oh, that's good. Yes.
And Tarek is definitely Mr. Perfect. He is out there drilling threes and cupping chip shots and just talking about how easy it is. So.
Yeah. Oh, I can see that in a heartbeat. But then you'd have to slam in some faces in there and whatnot. But like the heels are the fun ones, and this is what I've always tried to drive home when it comes to this: is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a cut and dry tournament with the same cookie cutter format and whatever. Like, let's add some spice to it. I mean, I get it. It's Pro Tour. That's the big dog. Same thing with Worlds. You got to respect those. But I think that a once a year invitational theme tournament, or like twice a year, maybe something for fun. It doesn't even have to be like high stakes in terms of prize. Like if the prize money, if the investment goes into production and just, like let's all go to Hawaii. Let's get everybody to Hawaii or somewhere, or Florida or Orlando. Somewhere nice and warm. Yeah. Let's set up a place and let's invite 8 people. 8 of the best in the world, or the most, prolific, or the people that, would put on a good show. LSS funds it or whatever. Small prize pool. Like literally like $1,000 to the winner.
Yeah,
but
whatever.
But their trip is paid, right? Like the flight and accommodation there. It's there for a 2-day event or a 1-day event. It's all good. And that's it. It's a celebration of the game. And I think that you could probably knock something out of the park for like $100,000 that is really
probably pretty good. Yeah, that people would pay attention to. That's for sure. Rob Seigel, the monster heel, and then we can build a stable right now, and it would be legendary. It'd be the 4 horsemen of flesh and blood.
Yeah, that would be like, it's like Tarek, Seigel. I'm sure you'd have like, I don't know if Matt Rogers would kind of slide in there, and Sasha Markovich.
I think it's Brennan. I think Brendan Patrick would have to go into that stable.
Because Hayden can't. Hayden is like the...
Hayden's too good.
He's like the John Cena of...
Yeah, he's hustle, loyalty, respect. Yeah. So we got to put him with the faces. But Seigel and Tarek and Brendan, and then we slot in some... we need the quiet assassin of that group. We can put Yuki in there, I guess. And so they can have the Terminator to just end everybody.
Dude. Oh my God, Captain Canada would just go in there and she would slay everyone's. Oh my God,
Yeah, she'd be the hot tag that just came in to clear the ring.
Just, yeah, clothesline, choke slam, clothesline, just absolutely deficit. Oh, yeah, it's like when Kane is like, it comes out from Royal for a Royal Rumble. When Kane comes in at like
11, let's go.
Kane rocks in at like 20th out of 30. You know, there's still like 10 bodies in the ring, and he just goes in and cleans house. Oh my god, that is like the dream. All right,
we are way off the rails again.
Who cares, man? F the rails, dude. Listen, I started this entire process by spilling coffee on all my valuables, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
All right. Well, let's walk in a little bit about the lore of the card games, because I know that, like, just looking at what's behind you, you're obviously very, you're very intimately connected to just the sort of the source material about a bunch of things, and I'm sure that. I mean, let's be real. You didn't buy Star Wars cards because you like cards. You bought Star Wars cards because you like Star Wars, right? And it's the same way for me. And that's kind of was my gateway into card gaming, was liking the source material, liking what it was based on, and the lore behind it. And here is Flesh and Blood. And it might have been a harder sell, because if Flesh and Blood came out as a Star Wars card game with the same rules, imagine you have heroes. Like, imagine it wasn't Katsu, it was like Luke Skywalker as a Jedi or something like that, you know? That the selling point for this would have been enormous, because it would have had a marketing behemoth behind it. But you have to sell the game in this regard, and then the lore kind of sneaks up on you. And somebody who's very very linked and knowledgeable about the lore is like Stephen Armada. I call him Stephen Cookus, aka Armada. He knows a lot about this, and it has started to hook me. And I want to ask you what you particularly know about the lore, if anything, because I know nothing about it, but I'm starting to get hooked on it. So tell us a little bit about your knowledge of the lore and how it appeals to you.
So I think I'm in the same spot you are, where the lore was not the first thing I cared about. I didn't identify at first with a specific hero and their motivations or anything like that. I identified with the game and the community, but that's starting to creep up on me a lot. And it kind of started with in Everfest, honestly. And the card that got me was Blood on Her Hands. Like, why is Kasai staring at her face in a pool of blood that she's holding in her hands? What happened? And then you go through that and you find out, she was the daughter of a general and a warrior, and then became, they were slaughtered, became a mercenary, and that's the copper token motivation and stuff like that. And I'm like, and that's a lot of paraphrasing. I know I'm not exactly right. Do not put me in correction corner, but it was that I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is just badass. Like, this is awesome. What else is there? Then find out about Volcor and Kano and how all that works. And then you find out about, and then I went and listened to quite a bit of the reading of the lore book on YouTube, and kind of went down that rabbit hole and learned a little bit more about the heroes themselves. And I did it as a background thing, so I didn't pay as much attention as I should have. And my intention is to someday read the full lore book, because I capture more when I read than when I listen.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that they have built very good lore. It just took me some time to have any investment in it. And in almost every card game that's not Star Wars, I've always become invested in the lore through art. And that's the same thing here, where I saw an piece of art and went, why is that? And then immediately hopped in and started going through it.
It's that's a great way to get looped into something, or just to get hooked. I mean, you're right. And Blood on Our Hands is a very good indication of kind of that there's, a picture tells 1,000 words. In this case, it's like, wow, like, and you go find those 1,000 words to support what that picture means. And same thing with, like, all right, like you look at like Magenshi Release or Lord of Wind, you're like, what the hell's going on over here? Does he have some sort of connection to wind and, the kind of things like that? Like, what's going on here? It drags you in that regard, and then you kind of want more, because the way that Uprising right now is being marketed, it's kind of like they're dropping these like pockets of lore and story on you, and that gets the gears turning in your head, and the hamster's doing double time on the wheel, and you're like, okay, what can we expect? And then you're kind of piecing together. So that it's fun in that regard, but is Flesh and Blood kind of destined to? I mean, look at your room, look at my room I'm in. There's, I say crap. I mean, I don't mean it like literally, but there's like crap all over the place. You know, I got comic books everywhere. I've got my Star Wars figurines over there, my collection. I got this, the statues, the whatever. They're everywhere. And you know, if I'm first to say that if Flesh and Blood came out with like a, you know, those really high detail kind of figurines or whatever,
The
like
artifacts ones,
yeah, I would just I'd be like, yeah, give me all of them, dude. Like all like I don't care how much they are, 30, $40 a piece. Like just like the first wave of 4, like imagine they're like give you the Wraith heroes. You got all right, you got Dorinthia, Reinhardt, Katsu, Bravo. That's the first wave. They're 34.99 a piece. Insta buy full pack. Let's go. Like is Flesh and Blood destined for this? Is this something that they're never going to be a digital client is what they keep saying, but is this another avenue for them?
They are rapidly building a valuable IP, an intellectual property that has value, and they're building a story through characters that has value. And once the characters within the story have value, they have value outside of the story, and that's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about how those characters that we have in our mind and how they act in our mind play out in our hands. Behind me, like right here, this is Wolverine and Jubilee from the X-Men animated series from the 90s. These were just released. Exactly.
Yeah, that one.
And they came in VHS boxes that are behind them. To represent how you would have had to rent them from Blockbuster, Family Video, whatever you had when you were that in 1994. That nostalgia market is huge. And having a physical representation of those characters for you to kind of identify with, because identity is a big deal. But in this case, people do identify with some of these heroes, and there is huge opportunities to release these characters in different media, whether it be, you know, a show like Arcane with League of Legends characters.
Precisely what I was trying to get. Well, not trying to get to, but that's the first thing that came to mind. And I haven't seen Arcane. I'm only now recently getting acclimated to Runeterra. I was there at the ground floor. I played a bunch of it. Kind of fell out of favor with me, but everyone kept saying, like, you know, the characters of Arcane from League of Legends and from Runeterra or whatever, even whether you know the game and the characters or not, the show in itself is very good. But I mean, imagine having a great show based on an IP or something that you're so invested in, you're so intimately linked to. If Flesh and Blood came out with a show of that caliber, dude, like that is just this might be what everybody's just waiting for.
Yeah. Imagine a scene where you have Dorinthia and Bravo fighting back to back and being overwhelmed by these minions that are coming out of the this army coming out at them, and all of a sudden you see this gust of wind fly through and bodies start piling up all of a sudden, and then the tingle you feel when Katsu just like appears out of the mist and walks up and then basically starts trash talking or whatever Katsu's gonna do.
He just shows up. What's up, bitches? It's like, okay, totally off character.
Was this a problem? Because this wasn't that rough, honestly. I mean, they weren't paying attention. So, something like that, where you have that kind of, you can build some character, more personality. Like we know that Lexi gets going in the bar. We've seen the card. We know that Oldham sits there with a beer the size of everybody else's head and just goes, I don't wanna,
Yeah.
It's kind of Eeyore. So we kind of have some of those personalities, and we know that Bravo's basically Gaston. So it's, we know some of that, but to see them take the direction and amplify it in a way that creates even larger amounts of identity, I believe it'd be a misstep not to.
I tend to agree. I mean, I feel like maybe not now. I think that right now LSS is in a position where they have to catch up to their own success and just kind of make sure that they're not chasing their own tail in terms of how fast they're going.
But when they're ready to hire for creative, Matt and I are both available, and we are ready to help you make your dreams come true.
I'm 5 years plus into working with CDPR for Gwent. I have done everything possible in order to voice a card. I have inquired. I have worked with them and championed that game forever. All I want is to be a voice of a card, And I told them, I said, I don't even want to be the art on a card. I don't think I deserve that. but let me voice a card, and I'm telling you right now, Legend
You might
Story.
deserve it.
Well,
like, honestly, you probably deserve it.
Maybe. Listen. It is what it is. What I say is that there are people within the community that deserve it be ahead of me, and I'm well aware of that, and I'm fine. But not everybody can have their likeness on a card, but not everyone might have the same voice talents and such that broadcasters like yourself and myself might have. And I listen. If ever there's a Legend Stories backed Flesh and Blood TV show or digital, internet series or whatever, web series, I mean, I could probably fit in for a character or two. I don't know which one I could do. I don't think I've got the chops for Bravo, but
no, but my DMs are open. I mean, I can be done. I don't have to voice anything. I'd be happy to just write it. Or just do concept stuff, like whatever. I don't need to voice anything. I mean, I have a face for radio, the voice not so much, but
that's
not true. I'm very pretty. I'm very pretty.
You're gorgeous, man.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just a curse. But the and I was another weird thing that this might just interest you was that my original major in college was television broadcast. Which is why the lighting in this room is insanely obsessive. It's a very small room, and I insisted on a fill light, and it's still impossible for me to get this the way I want it to. But it's close as I'm going to get for now, and I need to do some soundproofing stuff still. But yeah, I get obsessive about that type of thing because I was trained to do it.
Now, me and my political science degree, I'll tell you why your room can't be traded with competing ideological nations. I don't know.
We'll table that when we're not. We'll table that when we're not on wax.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But yes, I did broadcast things because I was intrigued by broadcasting, and one of my favorite stories is, and I'll tell you this. I'll tell you the full story sometime. One of my favorite stories was having Tom Brokaw ride shotgun in my 1987 Mercury Cougar. So
you're going too fast.
The story's quite good. But we can. I mean, this one we're already over on on time. We're
crushing. We do have another segment. In fact, we're actually axing an entire other topic of discussion because we did talk about the monorail for probably 15 minutes. And
the 10-minute monorail conversation was probably too much.
For who?
That's not too much. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, get out of town, buddy. Like, let's be real. All right. Well, Mr. Logan Petersen, that has been our first, your first segment, my second segment, but we're going to be moving on to segment 3, which is the Go Again segment. I hope that you will join us for this.
Get to go again.
You do get to go again right after this BCW commercial ad thing that I'm...
Break.
We'll call it a break. All right, BCW break coming up. ISP is always brought to you by BCW Supplies. Go to bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10. Yes, that's ISP10. Get 10% off the already low prices at bcwsupplies.com. Now, BCW Supplies is one of those awesome card accessorizing protection things. They do so much more than cards, though. Are you a comic collector? You can see in the back of my wall. I got comics galore. Some of them are slabbed, some of them are just protected. Coins as well, vinyls, records, things like that. They do so much more than just card protection, but cards are your jam. That's their mind. Go to bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off your first, second, third, 9 millionth order if you so choose. Support the channel as well. bcwsupplies.com, code ISP10. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to go wide on Logan Petersen as we go again on a series of rapid-fire questions, little pew-pew. And, I would be remiss if I didn't let you kind of spread your wings and fly a little bit on these because, you know what, I'm not for... This isn't Tinder, friends. No one-word answers on this.
Oh, boy.
All right, ready to rock and roll?
I'm going to swipe right. Let's go.
I like it. All right. Number 1. What is your hidden talent, Mr. Logan Petersen?
Archery.
Oh.
I grew up, I learned to shoot a bow when I was 4 years old and competed in archery tournaments until I was 13 or 14. And I competed in the non-sights division, so I do not use sights on a bow. I shoot purely by instinct.
You the man. I love it. Beautiful. Logan Cupid Petersen, straight up, right here on the show.
I have not ever pierced anybody's heart with an actual arrow.
Yet. Hang tight.
Yet.
Exactly.
There's opportunity.
Instinct shooting. I like that. Next one is, what is the greatest card game you have ever played? We might know this one.
Come on, man. Come on. It's Star Wars CCG.
Damn right.
I will say that Flesh and Blood does have an opportunity to dethrone it at some point. But that system and the way that it creates epic events and the feels that you're in the movie is just unparalleled good.
Well, listen, Flesh and Blood, I love you. I love you so much. I love you so, so much. But it's like, you know what? Like, it's one of those things where if I'm with somebody, if I'm dating somebody, and Shakira knocks on my door, I'm like, I don't care, man. Like, adios. Dude, if they just revived Star Wars CCG, I would just drop everything and jump back into Star Wars CCG in a heartbeat. I love that game.
Not even close. It would just be, well, everything else I have is now back burner and does not matter to me. And Lord Vader's coming and knocking on the door again. Let's go. Let's get that lightsaber out and get humming.
It's a perfect storm for me because I like long game card games that last a while. I don't like the point click go face like Hearthstone 7-minute matches.
Slow burn attrition.
Yeah, I like that exactly. I like that slow burn, that strategy of I like opportunity to be able to come back. I hate that kind of stuff. And one thing I will say is I do love the fact that Flesh and Blood is a longer game. Like you play like standard games are between 30 to 40 minutes. Like you go to the end of the rope and you have the back and forth. Flesh and Blood also does momentum immensely well. It does the resource system very, very well. But man,
it's the most incredible part of the game.
Yes,
honestly.
But let's get real, dude. Like nothing tops in terms of, first of all, also Star Wars is so complex. It makes Magic the Gathering look like tic-tac-toe.
It's construction paper and crayons, man. It's not.
You're doing the highest tier of calculus and then going to Magic and trying to match shapes through holes. That's kind of like the difference.
Imagine memorizing your pitch stack, but also that your opponent is ripping cards off the top of your library to the fact that you have to remember what count that they're at in the deck to have your pitch stack actually memorized to draw the cards you need to finish the game.
Correct. Destiny tracking.
That's Star Wars.
That's
one of the easier parts.
It came with a glossary that was like an inch thick.
Yeah.
In order for every small little random interaction, like, you know how they just came out with like CR2, like 2.0, like the comprehensive. Yeah, dude, like CR 2.0 and all the like intricate little interactions are like Bobo compared to Star Wars. It's ridiculous.
It's true.
That said, yeah, I agree with you there, man. And I'm actually slated to play in a Star Wars CCG retro tournament this week. So
through what set?
It's Premiere through Death Star 2. So
okay, through DS2. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the only format I play. And
I actually like through CC. But gets a little more thematic, I guess.
Yeah.
There's less good stuff decks.
That's like eventually it all kind of boils down to what's the best shell to beat the crap out of people with the EPPs, but it's a whole other podcast.
It really is.
All right. Speaking of which, number 3 on the question list here is, what defines a successful podcast?
The community around it. When you build a real community of people around a podcast, you have built something that brightens the lives of people. And I know that, for me specifically, this is not, our podcast doesn't have any monetization behind it or anything else at the moment. That wasn't something that we even thought about because we never thought we'd have any reason to, or having opportunity to either. But the community we've built is one of the proudest things I have. And the way that our community embraces everybody makes me feel like that is the success. And I think that everybody that does a show, that has a podcast, has a YouTube channel, has whatever, will define that success differently. But for me, that community growth, that community aspect, and how we interact with those around us that enjoy what we do is the hallmark of success.
Good answer. Who inspires you, Logan Petersen?
That's a hard one. Mainly because I'm of the type of person that takes a little bit from here and a little bit from there and doesn't really latch on to any one person or thing. Quotes, people's thoughts, the conversations you've had. I will read William S. Burroughs and take pieces from there. Vladimir Nabokov, Russian authors. Immanuel Kant, a lot of philosophy. Heraclitus, the father of all philosophy. It's the admiration part is that at the end of the day, every single one of these people are human. They're the same as me in the fact that we're all made of the same stuff, right? We're all flesh and blood, to kind of tie some, make a tie in here. And we all have our flaws. None of us are a perfect mix of anything. And I believe that admiration really is reserved for moments and not for people. You admire how people act in spots of adversity. You admire people in how in the courage and discipline and decision making that they have in times of crisis, or when they had an opportunity to be horrible and weren't. Those are more where my admiration comes from, is in moments and not in specifically who inspires me. But that being said, probably Walter Cronkite. I mean, sure. Mainly because the news cycle, the cycle of news that is as it is today, where it's mainly it's terrifying, honestly. Was started with William Randolph Hearst and yellow journalism in the early 1900s, and you had a kind of a break because Cronkite said "miss me" with that and presented news as news, and held to the stuck by that for his entire life and legacy. And he could have just taken the bag and got paid and done the sensationalism, and just decided not to. He decided it was more important to inform the world. One of my favorite quotes from anybody is, "We lost Cronkite, we lost the war," in reference to Vietnam. So that, I guess, if we're going to do a who, we're going to go with that one. That's because it was pure integrity.
It would have been hilarious if you gave that beautiful kind of like preface to leading up to just being like, saying all those wonderful things and being like, so if I had to pick one person, it would have been Adam Sandler. It's like, oh, okay.
Nope. No, definitely not that. Go listen to the song Medium Pace and understand
medium
pace and understand how that can never be anyone that you actually admire on that level.
Okay. What is your most ambitious Flesh and Blood goal?
Just to close. I spent my entire Magic career never winning a PTQ. I was an end boss a lot of times. I only ever qualified for the Pro Tour run rating. And I would like to just win one, right? To just get there one time, to kind of prove that I don't, I can get past it. I can win in that moment. I can feel like I can get over the hump, right? Mm-hmm. In the last 2 weeks, I've lost in the top 8 twice. Like, I'm already carrying it over, baby. So I would just like to be able to say that that I qualified on my own merit for the highest level of play.
That's a respectable goal to have. I can echo that for sure. Sometimes it's just you wanna take one home, right? And
yeah.
What is your most precious collectible?
This is insanely difficult. So there's a lot of stuff around me. You may have noticed that there's quite a bit of it. I've just got into collecting original pages of comic book art. Downstairs in my basement is one of the original McFarlane 18-inch Army of Darkness talking motion sensitive Ash toys. I also randomly, on a mannequin head on a bookcase in my living room, is an original concert worn Slipknot mask. Don't ask. Okay. That is also a pretty good story. And of all those things, I think right here, I put it next to me. This is just a random comic. It's Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 3, which is not one of the more important issues in this cycle. But it's signed by George Perez,
who recently passed away.
He did. George Perez was, when you think of good human beings and you think of the qualities that make a good human being, you just end up describing George Perez. Never a bad word about anybody. Kindness spilled out of him every time that he talked, every time that he smiled. he treated everybody like they mattered. He poured himself into his work. The making, again, I talked to you about this. The people that brighten the lives of others are the people that are the most valuable to me. And that is just George Perez. And that is the only book I have that is signed by him. And it was gifted to me because I had a bunch of stuff I was trying to get signed by him, and then he went into hospice, and I never put any stock in signatures. I don't have a ton of autographs. That's just not. I don't need proof that I met a person, right? And that's how they feel to me. And that's not to besmirch other people that enjoy autographs. That's just a me thing. But that one is important to me. Just because of who he was. And that's why, like Magic cards, I have Chris Rush sign stuff that I had Chris sign because he was that type of person too.
Mm-hmm.
He was just good to everyone. And so that's probably right now, I would say that's my most precious collectible. It's not my most valuable by any stretch, but it's definitely my most precious.
Precious and value are different things, right?
They're two different things.
One change that you would make to the Skywalker saga.
Oh man. Is it just canonizing the Zahn trilogy? Does that count?
Oh, Timothy Zahn. Well, they're kind of redoing the Thrawn.
A little bit with Thrawn coming, but we don't have Mara Jade Talon card, any of that.
No, Karn Horn, none of that, right? None of the.
We do. So Flake.
Oh, did I miss up on something?
Obi-Wan, episode 2. Have you watched Obi-Wan?
No, I have not. So did I just get completely gooned on this?
You did not.
Okay, don't say anything. Don't say anything. I'm watching it this weekend.
My only word of advice is pay attention.
Will do. I can. Okay. Absolutely. I'm very good at picking out the Holy Moses. Is that XYZ? So don't say anything.
I'm not going to say a word.
Okay.
But the change I'd probably make to the Skywalker saga is refocusing more on Leia and her experience and her journey. And they're starting to do that a little bit, but I think that Zahn did that quite a bit in Heir to the Empire and the Zahn trilogy, where you get more of a background of Leia's experience.
Yes.
And I feel like while Luke Skywalker is, obviously they built him to be the hero and face of the franchise, I think Leia's story is more interesting.
Oh, it's definitely more interesting, in my opinion.
I would tell that story. I would just refocus the entire saga on that story and put everything else in the background.
I would have loved to have seen the kind of like why is it that after Return of the Jedi, they're still ragtag and they're still struggling?
Yeah, right.
Why is it that you have Coruscant, you have the hub of the galaxy on your side, you have every other nation, every other country, world, system is out there supporting your cause. There should be a rallying point. In my opinion, it should have been, much like the Phantom Menace had a lot of political undertones to sort of drive the narrative. It could have been something similar, where it was like the growing pains of creating a brand new organization and having Leia at the helm. And because Leia was, in my opinion, Leia was like the most Leia was the most badass character, maybe aside from Han Solo. By a mile.
On the light side, yeah. On the side of the rebellion, absolutely. By a mile.
Grab life by the balls and just get it. She was essentially the pinnacle of just, it needs to be done. Let's get it done. I don't care.
When she walks up to Tarkin and she's just like, I'd expect to be holding Vader's leash with Vader standing right there. Yeah. Enough shade to keep a planet bereft of sunlight for a decade. Perfect.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I recognize your stench when you when I came aboard. Yeah. It's like, oh, bitch, please.
Just get him. Just slap him.
God, she's so good. Evacuate now in a moment of triumph. And then, bam, get the hell out of here, Tarkin.
Get him done.
Oh, God.
Tarkin.
I have to agree with you there. I mean, that's definitely a good one. All right. Last question, Logan Petersen. What is your walkout music?
This has changed a lot over the years. When I was younger, in college specifically, my hair was dyed black. The beard was dyed black. I wore a black trench coat a lot, black boots. And so I was just going to be AC/DC back in black. I was going to have a backpack with speakers built into it and just blare it whenever I walked into a room. Nowadays, as I've gotten older, right now would probably be something, it'd either be like Billy Talent, Reckless Paradise, or Boy Sets Fire After the Eulogy, I think would be my two picks, depending on just our mood, because everybody has two songs anymore.
But S Club 7 is not on the list.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
No, that's for you.
Grabs.
You can keep that one.
That's for Haydendale.
Yeah, there you go.
That is definitely for Haydendale for his being the babyface of the.
Yep.
I like it. Well, Mr. Logan Petersen, this has been a pleasure and a joy to have you on the podcast. It is something that I wanted to do for quite a while, and someone who I've met a few times and hung out with. I also beat you at Jackbox, which was.
You did. It was funny because you decided to trash talk third place, but I was in second. So yes, you did beat me.
I ain't gonna trash talk you. First of all, you invited me to play.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. And so I was gonna go in there and look. I literally just picked the skinniest, shortest dude in the room and said, "F you, I win." And then I strutted around like a peacock.
And called him a Muppet.
I did call him a Muppet, and then I literally just poof ninja dusted my way out of there, and you never saw me again. He has actually
embraced the Muppet nickname at this point, too.
Oh, has he?
He has, so you did a solid.
Oh, to who? For who? For all of you.
For Ben, yeah. Well, and us too.
Okay.
So.
Well, listen, I'm glad that he has embraced it. It came from a place of love, let's just say.
Well, there we go. That's all that matters.
All right, Logan. Well, please let us know. You obviously have the Flesh and Pod podcast. Give us the coordinates, the details, and where people can get more Logan Petersen.
Flesh and Pod podcast. We're on all the major podcast outlets. We're also on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at FleshPod. You can find me on Twitter at Logan Petersen. Petersen is Petersen. There are no O's. Don't put any in there. There's an O in Logan. There's none in Petersen. And I'm usually tweeting about Flesh and Blood anymore, and occasionally some politics and sports, but very rarely. And then also our Discord server is linked under our Twitter and is in our show notes of the podcast. And please come and join us. We have a good time, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. That's kind of our hallmark. But we do have serious conversations sometimes. It does happen.
I love it.
So please come in and hang out.
Well, I do definitely recommend everybody go check it out. Again, you see, like Logan is basically as advertised, and it's just a great person. And I have
someday Flake might follow me on Twitter too. It might actually happen.
Did I not do that?
You do not follow me on Twitter.
That's my bad. Let's just rectify that right now, shall we? I
just felt like I needed to call you out one time.
Oh. We'll just edit this out of the episode. They'll never know.
Listen to this. Yeah. Somebody's at the controls and they just get everything. This is absolute power corrupts absolutely, people.
There you go. That's one way to do it.
Now I'm just privileged. I'm way too privileged to be in this sphere now because I'm followed by the one and only Matt DeMarco. So
get the hell out of here, please. Like, this is one of the things that I'm not a celebrity. I'm not of anyone of particular, significant importance. I want to
clarify something very quickly here. You say you're not a celebrity, but I cannot think of a person on this planet that I enjoy celebrating more.
Oh,
so
well, now I'm blushing.
He's blushing. He's starting to mist up, folks. We got him again.
You got me again. God damn it. All right. Well, misty-eyed it is. We're going to have to end the podcast here, mainly because, what's that? Yeah, I'm coming. Nobody. Yeah.
Amazing. And
yeah. Well, we're going through a tunnel here, friends. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. So thank you so much again to all our patrons who have been so gracious in supporting the show. Again, you can go to patreon.com/InstantSpeedPod for as low as $1 a month. My God, $1. You get for $1.
American dollar. Is it American or is it a Canadian dollar?
It's an American dollar, please.
Okay, $1 American dollar. I don't know how you guys operate.
No, that's like half my rent, frankly, with the conversion. That said, for as low as $1 a month, you guys can support the podcast. Again, we don't hide anything behind paywalls, but if you want extra perks, extra juice, extra sprinkles, you can go ahead and up your tier. We have 3 tiers available. Thank you so much to everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Instant Speed.